Hey everybody! Koricon here, and I am joined today with Matt Kohler with Red Fist Productions, creator of Batman Master of Fear, which is going to be a 3-part web series that's coming out. And say hello, Matt.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Now, you are a director, writer, producer, fight choreographer. Is there anything you don't do on this?
Well, I don't act.
Okay.
Because I don't think I can. And mostly I did directing and I created the story. There wasn't a lot of fight choreography that was done, but what was done, yes, I did do the fight choreography. And, you know, I had 2 other people help me write, which was a blessing because they were the ones that kind of kept it together.
Right, like Ian Blaylock, right?
Yes, Ian Blaylock and Michael Scarry. Ian was the one who really wrote the episode. I kind of gave him an outline and he wrote it, while Scarry was the one who, you know, made sure everything made sense, everything connected from, you know, point A to point B.
Kept you on track?
Yeah, mainly because at first when, you know, the episode was created at first we wanted to have a couple more villains, and he was the one that told me, this is like 15 minutes, we can't do that.
Right.
So, if it wasn't for him, I don't know where we would be.
Sometimes you need somebody there that will just keep everybody focused on what actually needs to be done and not what we want to do, because half the time what we want to do doesn't always reflect what we need.
What needs to be done, which I definitely agree, and you know, he was that person.
Now you also directed it, but I think you had told me that you weren't at first going to direct it.
Yeah, we were intentionally going to, or at first we were going to look for someone to direct the episode, but, you know, over time I realized this is the story I created. I'm going to be the one who leads, you know, the charge.
Right.
Because I wanted to see my vision come to fruition. I'm obsessed with, you know, Batman martial arts, and I figured I am the best person to do the job, at least the person that we had.
Well, sometimes you just got to take control if you need it to come out a certain way. If you hand the reins over to someone else, their vision might be different than yours, or you just don't communicate very well, or it clashes. Sometimes you just got to take over.
No, I definitely agree, and you know, it really helped because, you know, my producer and, you know, best friend, I've been with him for 5 years on this, Richie Watkins.
Richie Watkins, okay.
He helped a lot if there was anything, because, you know, those 9 to 10 days were very stressful. You know, you're flying in all these actors, you're, you know, trying to make sure the story is working, and then not to mention, you know, you constantly, because it's film noir, you have a fog machine going.
Right.
So I'm not used to that, so I got headaches left and right.
But you know, it created for some really good-looking ambiance.
Yeah, it definitely did, and I mean, our DP was definitely the one who really emphasized more ambience.
Now your cinematographer was Adrian Petrosian. How do you say his name?
Yes, Adrian Petrosian.
Okay.
That's exact. Yeah, you said it right. He was a late pickup. We were still hunting around February, and then, you know, he came along. He was obsessed with Batman. He even has a tattoo of Batman on his right shoulder, I think. But anyway, yeah, he came along. He was like, "Oh, I love Batman. I'd love to be a part of this." And he connected with us a lot because he loved Batman the animated series. Not many people who worked with us or wanted to work with us knew of that show.
Really?
And so, yeah, which is astonishing. And if they did, they hadn't watched it a lot. And that was kind of the thing that we were looking for, is people who, you know, not really religiously, but understood that show. And he was one that was a lot like us, who grew up on the show, watched the show to death, and so he knew exactly what we wanted, and he was very easy to work with.
Because you also had based it on not just Batman the Animated Series, but you specifically said Mask of the Phantasm, which was the first movie that came out of Batman the Animated Series. It was like...
Yeah, if anything, if any specific episode or movie from, the Bruce Timm, Paul Dini era, I would say it is Massive Phantasm. That was a lot of inspiration. I really love, Bruce Wayne's story. I really love, how they deal with the villains, how they're kind of in there, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, just the tone. It's a movie that is, on surface, it's for kids. But when you watch it, it definitely has a more adult tone.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I try to go for in my stuff, because... I'm not the very super violent kind of guy. I really like, dark tones, but also stuff that could be, for kids.
Now, when Mask of the Phantasm came out, I remember when that came out in theaters for a very short period of time, but when it came out on video and we all got it, it was around, well, not the same time, but within a few years of Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy. And it had like that film noir feel, but it was better than Dick Tracy. Like this super expensive Warren Beatty movie. And it was better than this animation movie. Yeah,
and that's, for a little bit, and that's always been the problem with animated stuff, is a lot of people don't think, oh, that's for kids, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, as you said, when you watch Massive Phantasm, it's very serious. It's not very lighthearted.
No. And Madonna does a voice.
Yeah.
But, Mask of the Phantasm really surprised me when it came out. I was, because we had a lot of anime that came over, but this was, I think the first time that a U.S. studio felt like they actually contributed to anime in one fashion or another, even though it wasn't true anime. It was like our interpretation of an anime.
And yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Now the music is done by Near Shore. Yes,
he was probably the first crew pickup in terms of production and post. He's a Russian film composer who does a lot of game mods for Skyrim, Fallout 4, etc.
Nice.
And it was kind of one of those things that this doesn't really happen a whole lot. I feel like, I went on Facebook and went on to a couple of composing groups. I was like, hey, I need a film composer for this web series I'm doing, and I got a load of composers. And with doing the auditions and whatnot, that took a long time, but I instantly knew Nier was the one when I heard his stuff. He did a lot of Witcher 3 stuff, which blew my mind.
Nice.
And I was like, this guy's legit, and we need him.
Yeah, because the music in the trailer looks great. Sounds great.
Yeah, thank you.
That being said, let's cut over and check out the trailer real quick, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
All right, yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. In the last month, 10 police officers have been killed. Is Gotham City safe?
If the mayor can do everything in his power, then what are we still doing here?
And I promise you that I, Roman Sionis, will do everything in my power to stop the terror of the Black Mask and any other terrorist that threatens the city.
Come now. I thought you would be smarter than this.
That was great. That was great, Matt. I like that. I want to get into some details on it, but first, I wanted to talk about some of your actors. You got Ra Liba playing Nightmare.
Yep. So Ra Liba was the first actor that responded to us. When we put out the casting call for actors, we had over 1,000 in a weekend.
Wow.
But Raw personally contacted us. He did, and he was like, I want to be a part of this. And he did not pick anyone else, even though I'm pretty sure he could have. And he was like, I want Nightmare. For some reason, that character intrigued him. The idea that we create a villain for this show or this universe. And Raw Liba, when I didn't know who he was at first, but then when I found out, I was like, okay, we have to get him. Whatever it takes. Yeah. As I told you before we went on, he was the first person to be Eric Killmonger in the Black Panther movie.
Right.
But then, Michael B. Jordan got that role. He was actually the first person Mel Gibson went to for Apocalypto. He was in Bone Tomahawk with Kurt Russell.
Right.
Got to choke him out. And, he was in The Wire. He did a lot of work with Idris Elba. And so this guy's been around the block.
And I think we were talking about it, I made the correlation of like Scott Adkins, where you see him in everything and you recognize him, but you're not quite sure what you know him from. But he pops up in everything.
Yeah, and Raw has a very distinct look. Mm-hmm. And that was the key to finding all the actors. And, not only that, his performance was amazing. I love the voice. Just the look. I mean, you have this, 6'3", 6'4" guy, 200-plus guy. I mean, he just dominated the scene, and that's what we needed.
Yeah, you need a villain that can be able to be like an alpha male and take control of a scene like that.
Yeah.
And so Nightmare is an original villain that you guys created.
Yeah, so Nightmare, he is definitely an original villain, and it took us about 9 months to really develop the character, because, at first when we came up with the idea to do a Batman show, I went out of my way to, okay, we have to do our own villain, because a lot of the villains have been done to death, and
right.
there's certain villains or certain characters that haven't been brought into the Batman universe. I was like, well, we could do something like this. Nightmare was one of those characters when I was very obsessed with Eastern culture, and so that is a lot of the character that is brought into there, as well as some Western storytelling obviously with Batman.
And when we were talking about it, I said I thought it was a good idea that you guys created your own villain, especially for something like Batman, because if you used an established villain, like say the Joker, people wouldn't be concentrating on your story and how you filmed it. They would only be concentrating on the person that's playing Joker and how they compare to every other person that has played Joker.
Yeah, and when you told me that, I was just thinking, boy, if we did someone like Joker or Riddler, we would have a lot of people that we'd have to, I mean, there would be no way we would top a lot of those great actors. And
right.
Maybe we could have, but I think, with Nightmare, we found the best person for the role.
Well, and it keeps people focused on your story. If you have an established villain, people are only going to be talking about that. They're not going to be talking about your story structure or how you filmed it. They're not going to be talking about anything except for this villain and how they compare to other people that have played this incarnation. So it's a great way of them analyzing Nightmare as an original villain, but it still keeps them focused on the story. Plus, they don't know anything about this character, and you're giving them that information. So there's nothing for them to go back to a comic book and say, "Oh, you were wrong. You were wrong."
Yeah, and the one thing to add to that is this is an original story. Mm-hmm. Everything about it will keep the audience guessing. That's the one thing that I have a huge problem with, a lot of the Marvel films, is that I know exactly what's going to happen at the end of the movie.
Right.
If not very close. And as a comic book fan, it's kind of irritating sometimes, because sure, yes, do I want to see some of my favorite stories being adapted? Of course. But at the same time, I don't want to go in the movie being like, okay, this is where this part happens. Okay, now this is where... it just gets dull. And for me as a fan, I love guessing.
Yeah, you don't want to
that's-
just be following the beats.
Yep. And that's what this show is a guessing game, trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen next. How is Nightmare going to reach Batman?
Right. I also thought it was smart that you created Nightmare because since you're influenced heavily by Batman the Animated Series, Batman the Animated Series had created one of the most famous villains that we have now, which is Harley Quinn.
Yep.
She wasn't in any of the comic books. They created her specifically for the show, and then she just became wildly popular.
Yeah, and that's kind of that is our goal with Nightmares. We think we have a pretty good shot with the people that we have, with the connections that we have, to have Nightmare, go farther than just this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be cool if if you do really well with these three, that we could get more stories in the future with this villain. If not as a web series, maybe someone would want to pick it up for a novel or a graphic novel of some kind. That would be great.
Of course, that would always be nice.
Now your Bruce Wayne, your Batman, is Johnny Alonzo.
Yep, Johnny Alonzo was... He was one of the first people to contact us via phone, but it took us a while to sign him, because it was one of those things that we were busy with other things, with working with other characters, because Bruce Wayne does not play a huge part in the first episode. Mm-hmm. It's building up the other characters.
Right. But everybody knows Batman's backstory.
Yep.
We need to build everyone else.
And that's the thing. We don't, to just go off of that, we don't talk about, Bruce Wayne's parents. Yeah, we know they're dead. So we figure, not spend any time at all dealing with that.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, that's been beat to death. I mean, that part of the storyline has been in almost every movie incarnation. We've got it. I don't know.
And we're gonna have to wait like another 80 years to probably make it relevant again.
Yeah.
But with Johnny Alonzo, he was a TV actor at first. He was, a supporting role in One Tree Hill, Dawson's Creek. He's in Gotham. Mm-hmm. He's now in a lot of movies. And the one thing that really brought me to Johnny Alonzo was his look. He did not look, your normal 200+ pound muscular Bruce Wayne / Batman, because I wanted to go with a more leaner Bruce Lee approach. The 140-pound, very lean, very fast, very agile.
So, were you sorry, let me think how I want to say this. Was that influenced any by the Batman Beyond series? Because he is a very slender, fast, agile. Or maybe Robin. Robin was like that too. Batman
Beyond is a huge inspiration for the show.
Okay.
So both Batman Beyond and Batman the Animated Series.
Because I loved Batman Beyond. I thought that was great. Yeah. And the movie they made, Return of the Joker. I love that one too.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And so that was our approach. And one of the things that we wanted to work on was Batman does not have a cape. We wanted to put that into the show because, as a martial artist, it's a lot harder to move around if you have something, dangling in the back of you at all times.
Well, you can harken back to what's the Incredibles. When they were talking about capes.
No capes.
No capes. All the villains that died because of their cape.
I don't want, Batman to get, his cape stuck in a turbine.
Well, and if you're doing a more of a martial art based web series, that cape's just going to get in the way.
Yeah, and a very big possibility, because of insurance. We don't want anyone breaking an ankle, and that is another problem that could happen. But in terms of the story with Batman, because we did a leaner approach, he has to the suit is more than just, okay, I can deflect bullets, I have all these insane gadgets that pretty much I don't need to know martial arts. Where in this, it's like, okay, everything about him has to be impactful. So he has to be lean, which means his hits are powerful. He's fast. The cape, or the suit, everything about that has to help him instead of hinder him.
Right. Yeah, and they have done that in some of the movies as well, like in The Dark Knight, where Batman got more of a utilitarian costume, like the helmet that moved around. They've done that many times where the suit reflects the style of whatever that Batman is needing to do.
Yeah, and it's also another thing is it also helps when it's an alternate universe or a different world, because it's set in the 20s, that you can tell your own version of this is how I think Batman would be, instead of this takes place, in between, Batman Begins and Dark Knight, let's just say.
Right. The 1920s, huh?
Oh yeah, that is my favorite time period. I'm very weird with stuff, So, my favorite time period of literature is the 1830s, mainly because of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Right.
But yeah, 1920s I've always been a huge fan of. The filming. It's very early on, but the look of films back then were just just everything about it. And also another thing is, because I live in the Midwest, we've always been stuck on the 20s. Chicago's all about it.
Right.
We have a lot of buildings from the 20s. And so, it's very easy when you live in the Midwest to bring the 20s to Gotham, or Gotham to the 20s.
Now, a lot of my subscribers and people that watch me know that I love period pieces. I love movies that take place in a certain time period, and I can look at the stuff in the production, what's in the background, and I like absorbing all of that to feel like I'm in the 1920s. Is that something that I know you like that era, but is that something that influenced you and why you wanted to film in that era?
So,
or was it the film noir aspect?
At first, it was because of Batman the Animated Series. I was really obsessed with that look, and then it went further on. I want people to be in the 20s. I want people to feel like, okay, it is the 20s with, some increase in technology. It's definitely one of those things where it's kind of like how, a lot of clothing is coming back. Well, what if instead, a little bit of technology was back in the 20s? And so, the outfits, we're working on certain things, but every single building you see is, from the 20s and before then. We filmed in this beautiful cathedral that was from, the early 1800s.
Nice.
And then we went to, we went to a lot of locations that, are historic in the Midwest and, before the 1920s, for the purpose of that. And same thing with the clothing. We made sure to try to give that look.
Very nice.
We didn't just,
And so moving on to Rick Montgomery Jr. as Alfred. How did you come across him?
So when we found Rick, it was hearkening back to the whole idea. The show has to be different because, putting your show on the internet or, Netflix or anything, especially when it comes to Batman, how many times can you watch something where, it's a big Batman, the black hair, 240, and, everything kind of looks the same, very Dark Knight look.
Right.
Well, the 50th time, it gets, boring, or it's just the same thing.
Right.
So we went for a different approach, and I saw Rick. He had like a ponytail. He looked like a hippie, and I was like, this is our Alfred. This combines with the Bruce Wayne punk rock look. So we have punk rock Bruce Wayne and hippie Alfred.
That works.
And it's just adding to the quirkiness, and that's what I really wanted to do.
Now, so this takes place 3 years after Batman has been away from Gotham.
Yes.
And
so,
is it spoilers if you tell us why? Is that something that we need to find out as we watch?
No, I will not explain why exactly he leaves, but I will, there's certain things. So what happens is before the show takes place, Batman is, fighting Scarecrow. One day, he finds out that Scarecrow's dead. Now, when he goes to the scene of the crime, he discovers that this was done by someone unordinary, and that's why he leaves the city. He doesn't tell anyone he's gone. He just leaves. And so for 3 years, he's been trying to figure out who killed Scarecrow and who's coming after me. And so that's why he's been healing his wounds. He's been training, because I really wanted to give the idea that this is, Batman's, in his 40s, but at the same time, as an athlete, and if you heal up and if you keep training and push yourself, you have wisdom and you also have the athletic ability. So this is almost Batman's, one last hurrah at his peak.
Well, I'll love that because I'm close to 40. So, yay for 40-year-olds.
I'm a huge component of you only age if you tell yourself that.
Yeah. You're only as old as you think you are.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about some of the things in the trailer, and I'm going to bring up. Let's see, I'm going to bring it up here. Right in the beginning, this first scene, we've got the two people fighting with the bows.
Yep.
I do like that the natural light. Your camera is moving. You're panning around. Was that a steady cam?
Yes, it was a steady cam.
Because what I liked about it is it felt dynamic, but at the same time it didn't feel like it was on a track. But it didn't shake, and that's one of the things I liked about that is I don't like camera shake. I can't stand it.
Yeah, that was a key thing. So as I've said, I'm obsessive with 70s and 80s martial art films where they, stay the course, they hold the camera, they let you see the action. And as a martial artist, I enjoy that. And so that's what we were trying to do with, this scene and a later on scene is to let the audience enjoy the fight scene for once instead of almost getting sick.
Yeah, one of the things my subscribers know, I talk about this a lot when it comes to action sequences, is you can kill any action scene with what I call the SCQ, which is shaky cam, close-ups, and quick cuts. If you use too much of that in any order, you're going to kill your action movie.
Yeah, because the one thing I've noticed is that even though audiences might not understand how choreography works, they can understand when someone doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's those three things that instantly know this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Even though the people who are creating is like, oh, see, anyone can look like they're fighting. No. You have to train someone.
No.
And that's why,
yeah.
That's why martial art films.
Like a lot of the bigger budget action films, they'll have like 3 or 4 months before principal photography where they train their actors to do the fight scenes. And those movies turn out great, like John Wick. But then when you have a movie come around that does a lot of shaky cam and close-ups and quick cuts, you're like, oh, so they didn't do any training before principal photography. They just kind of showed up on set and did a bunch of one-shots with a punch and then another shot with a face. Obviously, they don't know what they're doing. They're having to edit around the bad performance. So I'm happy to hear that you are one of those people like me where you want to pull the camera back, let us see the action in frame, and with longer edits. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because with this, this is definitely a pitch episode or a pilot, and, the fight scenes are much smaller, but they progressively get bigger, and over time, I want to have longer periods of choreography. I know for the last episode when Nightmare finally fights Batman, I'm going to ask my actors to be with me for a month so we can train that for that fight scene, because that's what's going to sell that episode, and that's also what's going to put an end cap on the show.
Right. I mean, that's your crescendo. Your
Yep.
The word that I can't think of right now. But now
Crescendo.
Crescendo. Thank you.
You had it.
I was so close.
You had it.
I was so close. Now I'm looking at the scene. It's about 9 seconds in, and you have your character with the gun. I like the fog. Now, you were saying that the fog machines weren't that great, but the look of it looks really good. You have a
it looks. I was so happy with it, and our fog machine was slowly dying. But yeah, I definitely, because once again, the film noir look, and it just looks more epic or cinematic.
It does, and you have a lot of the way that you set up your lighting. It seems like you have a lot of
In the last month,
your
10
key
police
lighting
officers
on
have been
one
killed.
side or another, not very much straight on, so you get a lot of shadows going on in frame.
We definitely wanted to make people not look at their best, and that's kind of what
Gotham City safe.
film noir
if the mayor can-
slash key lighting does, is shows defects about you or certain other things, because that's what I love, is a little bit more believable look to people.
Well, that, and for a Batman movie, how it translates into film noir so well is because both Batman and film noir do a lot of that side key lighting, so you have a lot of shadow. And having a lot of shadow in a Batman movie is good, and having a lot of shadow in a film noir is good, so slapping them together just makes a lot of sense. So
Agree.
I like the way that you have your lighting. I'm looking at the mayor right now. I like his clothes. It does look very 1920s, especially with his haircut. He kind of looks like a mobster.
Yeah. I hate Roman Sionis, aka Black Mass. We didn't really want to, go with the stereotype, Italian mobster, but at the same time, it does play to the story, because Black Mass is not, one of those villains that has been done a lot, and B is actually a good villain, and I wanted to showcase him.
Right.
And like you said earlier, when you do a villain that everyone's done, they kind of compare and contrast with the other ones. With Black Mask, the only other live adaptation was the one episode from Gotham.
So most of your locations for the city stuff was done in Chicago?
No, so it's actually done in a small town around the St. Louis area in Belleville, Illinois. That was actually the location where the movie In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier was filmed.
Oh, okay.
If you've ever seen In the Heat of the Night.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, and so, because, one of the funny things about, Midwest downtown areas, they all look the same. If you're in the Midwest, especially if Illinois, if you are in a downtown, because they all look the exact same.
So you're like, what town am I in right now? I don't remember.
Yeah, pretty much. You just know you're in Illinois.
No.
And, go on.
So most of it was filmed in that city for the architecture as well?
Yeah, we were planning on going farther out, but because we were in the St. Louis area, cost would have been too much to, bring all the crew from St. Louis to the Chicago area, which is a 4-hour drive.
Right.
Where, there were some really great locations, really excellent people who allow us to do this for very little to have. And the locations were amazing. I was thankful what we got.
So the location, the cities worked with you really well.
Yeah, yeah. This location, we got it for free.
Nice. Wow. So what kind of cameras did you guys use?
So the camera that Adrian used was a Blackmagic. The reason why is because when we are doing a lot of the fight scenes, we need a more mobile camera, because we didn't want to just snap the camera on a tripod at all times.
Right.
We wanted some movement just to make sure, okay, you can see all the choreography from all angles. That being said, he could have never moved with the speed we were going at with the red camera.
No.
And so we went for a smaller camera, the Blackmagic, and even at that, he was still having a hard time keeping up with us. We had to either slow it down or, work around and try to...
Yeah, those red cameras get pretty... I mean, they're pretty big.
Yeah, and another thing is they just take a lot of time via post-production with a lot of transcoding, a lot of, if you shoot it in 4K, where for us, seems how we're always going to put it out in 1080p, especially for this first episode. The difference between a Blackmagic and a red camera was not too much.
No, I wouldn't think so. I mean, and from the trailer, it looks great. You will probably... Yeah, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to know.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, for most people, the difference between 4K and 1080 is not a lot. I mean, especially when you're trying to go with an older look, it looks kind of weird if, you have this really nice 4K camera,
right,
and everything just looks new. It's like, well, that doesn't look right.
Right.
I just went to go see Alien Covenant, and I got upset that all the technology was new, even though I thought it was a prequel to Alien.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they have HD screens, and they didn't have that back then.
True. That's true. I didn't actually touch on that in my review. I liked Alien Covenant, but yeah, it's been a while since I saw the original Alien. And when you look at it, those computer systems, yeah, that's pretty funny. But no, I agree with you. The technology should have reflected the time period that Ridley Scott was doing the movies in. But I think most people are going to overlook it.
And that was one thing that just stuck at me. It was like the first 2 minutes. I was like, oh gosh, no. And so that was the entire time I thought of that.
So making YouTube videos all the time, I'm editing and whatnot, as you would do. But when I saw Logan, the only thing I could think of was how much editing the nurse did for her cell phone video when she was going through and I was like, my God, she's doing voiceover. She's got like 20 different camera angles. Like, what is going on with this?
I never thought of that. That is amazing.
So the whole time they were showing that scene in the movie, I wasn't paying attention to anything that was going on. All I could think was, my God, like, look at all of the editing she's doing for this cell phone video. Where did she find the time to do that while she's running away? I was so confused.
Wow. I've seen that movie 3 times, and I never thought of that.
Dude, now next time you watch it, that's all you're going to think about.
Oh, gosh.
You're going to be like, wow, that she did do a lot of editing for this cell phone video. And she had audio overlays and all this stuff. I was like, man.
Yeah, too much work for in phone video.
Well, that, and she's supposed to be taking it quick and secretive, but there's nothing secretive about it.
That never made any sense.
No.
How, she literally recorded right in front of all of them. It's like, how did no one notice she was recording this?
Right, exactly. So on the fight sequences, who are your main influences for your fight choreography?
So I love Sammo Hung, The Magnificent Butcher. It's a film from I think it was 1980. It's the other big one is Jackie Chan's Police Story.
Oh yeah.
It's my favorite action film.
Yeah, the first Police Story is one of the best.
fact that he doesn't do anything fancy in terms of, you know, aerials, but the simplicity is just so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just impossible to, you know, compete with. It's so that I really there's certain things that come into fight choreography. So in terms of pace, Police Story. In terms of the cinematic approach, Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. And
Nice.
then in terms of build-up, I'd either say, you know, Episode 4 to Episode 5 of Star Wars, how you don't see Luke and Vader interact until Episode 5 at the end.
Right.
Or the Rocky movie, where you don't see Apollo Creed and Rocky intermingle until the end.
Well, yeah, and when you do that, you get emotionally involved with your character, so it has more impact when you actually do the fight scene. Yeah, I agree.
Because that's part of my problem with a lot of movies now is, you know, they have so many fights with the characters. Like in Winter Soldier, they had 2 to 3 fights or whatnot with each other, or you know, even in Dark Knight Rises. And so when they fight again, yeah, it's cool, but they've already, you know, done so much with each other. It's just kind of another scene where what we want to do is make sure, okay, you better not blink because this is the only time you're going to see them together.
Right, it has a much stronger impact.
Yep.
Sammo Hung, I was surprised that you mentioned him. Not a lot of people talk about him because they mostly concentrate on Jackie Chan, but they had some great movies and they came up together in the opera schools.
Yeah, him. I can't think of the third person, the Dragon Brothers.
Yeah, it was Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, and Biao Yen.
It starts with Biao Yen. And I am, as I've said, a huge martial art fan. That's all I really watch when it comes to action films, because they just do it like no other.
Yeah.
So, you know, I love like Yuen Ping. It's the guy who does Ip Man, the Wilson Yip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. Daniel Tong, the guy who directs a lot of Jackie Chan stuff.
Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen. And even like, you know, the fight director of The Raid. You know, I really like him. And so, a lot of the fight scenes that I, you know, are inspired by are from over there, and that's what I wanted to bring into this show, was a very martial art fight scene.
See, I'm with you. I'm on the same page with you on the fight scenes. My before Jackie Chan became famous in the U.S., my dad would actually get his movies from Hong Kong. So we have like the original VHS of Drunken Master 2.
Oh my gosh, I am so jealous.
You know, with the Mandarin all in it, it's an original VHS, you know, and it was back when it was called Drunken Master 2. You know, in the U.S. they call it Legend of the Drunken Master or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, it's Drunken Master, or Legend of the Drunken Master, and it shows like Jackie Chan like modern clothing punching to the screen.
Doesn't make sense. No.
Oh, yeah.
But we have the original Drunken Master 2 because we loved that. Some of the fight scenes in that movie are just epic.
They are flawless, and that's the thing is, you know, over you know, in America, we really, especially now, don't really look at those fight scenes. You know, a lot of my, you know, colleagues / friends, when we, you know, started this company together, I showed them a lot, and I told them, you're not going to be able to watch a fight scene over here. I'm not saying anything about them, but you can tell what hard work looks like from these fight scenes. You know, I'd show them, you know, Donnie Yen films, Jet Li, and now they're just like, oh, close up, they don't want to expose the actors bad. Oh, shaky cam, they don't want to do that.
Right.
Oh, cut back.
Yep. Yeah, like recently I saw Assassin's Creed, and I pretty much wanted to throw up in my mouth. The action sequences were so horrible. Like they did all 3 of the shaky cam close-ups and quick cuts, and then on top of that, they were swapping between time periods, so they added a fourth dimension to make it even worse. And it was really disappointing because you could see some of the action sequences, like the big stunts with some of the cart and the horse chase scene. You could tell there was a good scene in there, but the only people that got to see it were the stuntmen and the people filming it. Like, we only got like 30 or 40% of the actual sequence.
And it's so irritating because with the Bourne movie, when, you know, shaky cam was kind of, not really, I don't know if invented, but popularized, it's, you know, kind of like with the Matrix bullet time. They thought, well, everyone can do it because, you know, this one made money, right. And that's not the case.
Yeah, there's a time and place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind some shaky cam. I don't like it to where it's like the found footage stuff, because then I just end up getting seasick. But if you have some shaky cam in an action scene is fine, as long as your edits are long and the camera's pulled back so that you can still see what's in frame and you can acclimate to the camera shaking and it doesn't bother me as much.
Agree, yeah.
But when you start cutting really fast and going back and forth, or too many close-ups, then the shaky just makes it so much worse and you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, and, you know, it's one of those things that I think slowly we're getting back to. John Wick, I know.
Yeah.
You know, The Raid, you know, even that film that's, you know, overseas came over here and became a big success. Same thing with Ip Man.
Well, and
those films are,
and like Ong Bak with Tony Jaa.
Yep.
Like, we're starving for good action.
And, you know, hopefully one day it comes back, because, you know, we have really talented martial artists, and we kind of poo-poo them. You know, when I heard Donnie Yen was going to be in episode, or Rogue One, I was really excited, and then I found out he was just kind of doing the best of Donnie Yen.
Yeah. I was super excited that he was in it, but then he wasn't utilized. So,
and so
I was like, ugh. Yeah.
And, you know, that's what we're missing, and hopefully, you know, that comes back. Or as well as, you know, maybe, you know, stuff like my show or other shows start doing, pull back the camera, let the actors do it.
Well, the directors from John Wick, they were both stuntmen and fight choreographers. That's why their stuff looks so good in John Wick. And they're starting a new renaissance. One of them went to go direct Atomic Blonde, which is coming out with Charlize Theron. And the other one did John Wick 2, and he's going to be doing the reboot for Highlander. And they're doing they're planning on a John Wick 3. So, I mean, they're branching out and doing a whole bunch of other movies. I think it's just going to compound where, you know, studios are going to see, hey, these movies are making money. People are going to this John Wick movie that didn't cost us a lot of money, but it's making us a huge profit. We need to start filming our action movies better.
And maybe movies will become lower budget.
I would hope so. I mean, you're always going to have your big budget movie, the summer blockbuster extravaganza thing. But
yeah, but when it feels like every weekend now is like a movie that costs 150 or 200 million now.
Right.
I mean, if I was just, you know, a person who went to the movie theater every weekend, or at least, you know, wanted to, because I mean, there's like a big movie that comes out every weekend, and I don't go to the movies every weekend, so there's just too much now.
Right. Yeah, and but you still get the smaller budgets sneaking in, you know, with good movies. Oh, yeah. Like Swiss Army Man. I love that movie.
I have not seen that, but one movie I'd definitely say, you know, I think was underrated was Kubo and the Two Strings.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that. It didn't do as well in the theater as I thought it would. I thought it would do a lot more.
I think it's the story. You know, the look you'd think is a kid's movie. And then when you go see it and you find out in the first couple of minutes that the story is about a grandfather just ripped some kid's eye out and he wants the second eye back, or second eye, you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit dark.
And that just doesn't happen with, kids' movies now.
No.
They're not like what they were like in the 90s.
No, when you had like The Dark Crystal or Labyrinth, Time Bandits, like those kind of movies, they got pretty dark for a kids movie, but I loved them.
Yeah, and I mean, like kids movies now. I mean, I love Zootopia, but I mean it's like Zootopia, Frozen, and Cars 3.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but they're bringing back The Dark Crystal. Netflix is going to do a series, and
oh really?
Yeah, they're bringing back Jim Henson's puppet group to do the show.
Oh my gosh!
So that should be awesome. It's supposed to take place before Dark Crystal. I'm really excited about that. Hoping they keep the tone.
Netflix sounds like the new Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean they're throwing money and they're leaving the creators alone. That's what I'm liking.
It feels a lot like the 70s again, even though I was not alive for that time period. But where like Hollywood was kind of screwed. And they're like, all right, we got to do something. And they let all these directors make these cinematic masterpieces left and right.
Yeah, that's where you got Coppola coming out and Kubrick.
Because I was talking to a couple buddies of mine. I was like, name 5 directors of today that are famous, that are like celebrities. Where back then, there's so many left and right that you would go see a movie because of that director. And I was telling them that because I was so shocked that the Christopher Nolan Dunkirk trailer had like 27 million views. I was like, this is just a World War II movie. But Christopher Nolan is a celebrity.
Yeah, same with Christopher Nolan, J.J. Abrams, probably... I
would say if Joss Whedon starts doing
Joss
more.
Whedon, he's doing Batgirl.
Yeah.
I would also...
And I guess I'd say Zack Snyder. But I don't know how much people like him. It's more of just like, oh, he's done a lot.
He's a famous director. I just wouldn't say he's a great director.
Yeah. He's just kind of got a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And then, it would be some of the more famous ones that are out. And then the rest of them are the old school. You got the Ridley Scotts and the
Spielbergs,
the Clint Eastwood,
the Robert Zemeckis, Francis Ford Coppola.
Now I would say Matt Reeves, after this new Planet of the Apes movie comes out, some of the stuff that he might do in the future, that he could become like the next kind of Christopher Nolan-ish or Joss Whedon, where people go to one of his movies. Because what he did with the 3 Planet of the Apes movies blew my mind. Like, I didn't think you could make a good one after the Tim Burton movie. And he came out and gave us 3 all original storylines, because this third one looks like it's an original storyline from the other 2. Like, they don't feel like carbon copies of each other, and they're great. They're great stories.
I think I have not watched any of them, partly because in some ways I'm an originalist. It's really hard for me to get past the first one. Like, I really love Planet of the Apes. And, I guess I can't really say that because, like, you have, like, The Thing that's a remake. John Carpenter's The Thing. Or even, certain movies that, took from other movies. Like, T2 was really inspired by Blade Runner.
Right.
And so, it's just, I don't know. I think in a society where there's so many remakes, reboots, whatever you want to call them, it's just really hard for me to, there's always going to be that rare gem. It's just kind of hard to sit down and finally watch the rare gem.
I don't consider these remakes because they technically take place before the original Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah, that is.
And the first movie, like, is way different. It's basically about the first ape, Caesar, getting his getting a little bit of knowledge because of a scientific. Anyway, it doesn't feel like the old Planet of the Apes movies, but you can see the evolution through the storyline of the three of how they got there. So I do like the fact that they didn't try to remake Planet of the Apes like Tim Burton tried to do. You could consider these prequels, I guess.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Anyway, I think we talked for a very long time, and we could probably sit here and talk for hours about movies, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, we have very similar opinions, which I guess is always a good thing.
It is. I didn't know that you had the same influence as I did when it came to action movies and fight scenes. That's awesome. So I'm actually more excited about seeing your web series now because you have the same kind of base that I have when I base my criticism of action movies on. So that's good.
A lot of the actors were kind of blown away on my love for martial arts. I mean, that alone I could talk about for hours.
Well, to save my fans from having to watch a 6-hour video, let's end it here, and I'll end up talking to you on the side at some point. But
all right, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, Matt. I really appreciate it. This has been a fun interview, and
thank you.
To everybody out there, make sure you check out Batman Master of Fear. I will have a link to the trailer in the description below, along with some of Red Fist Productions contact information for like Facebook and whatnot. So check out all of their links. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on this. Are you excited for the web series? Do you like Batman? What do you think of the martial art aspect? Comment below. Let me know. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. And I will see you on the next video.